in any given day, any given moment. You could wake up and do your morning routine and set yourself up for success and have a difficult conversation with somebody you love. And that could move you to the negative side of the scale into frustration or anger or resentment or whatever, right? And same with just, the market shifts and you get met with some unexpected financial bill, or you experience a tragedy in your life. It takes the winds out of your sails. All of these things are going to happen in the life experience. So we're not expected to be sunshine and rainbows. And so in those moments of darkness, one of the activities that I do is I look back on how much of my now reality was once just an idea, a wish, a hope, a pipe dream.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Eternal Optimist Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Rincon. And today, it is a sincere pleasure and a privilege. And just so you know, it took us a while to get here because I've been having some technical difficulty. I have an amazing guest today. Her name is Erin Bradley, and she is full of stories and enthusiasm and optimism, and she's overcome some stuff. And she's going to regale us with tales today of overcoming adversity and the stuff that she's putting into the world now. And it's been a real pleasure chatting with her for a few minutes before we got started right now. So without any further ado, I welcome to the show Miss Erin Bradley. Erin, how are you today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me, Matt. I'm so excited. I love the name of your show. I feel like we are kindred spirits just by the title. So I'm sure we have plenty to unpack here and try to keep it interesting for your audience.
Awesome. So I'm going to pull a complete 360 of what I normally do and go off script. I normally finish the show by saying, you're on the Eternal Optimist Podcast. What might Eternal Optimist mean to you? And we're going to start there. So what might Eternal Optimist mean to you, Erin?
Okay. Well, since we're starting there, I'll share with you that when I was a kid, as the youngest of 5, my dad would say, if my best day could be half as good as Erin's worst, I'd be a happy man, which was the punchline of his speech at my wedding. And I used to come downstairs and tell my parents, it's the best day of my life. And they were like, you said that yesterday. I was like, it keeps getting better. And so there was definitely some programming of eternal optimism within my DNA, basically when I came out of the womb. And then I think I strengthened it through intentionality over the years. But ultimately, I do believe that as hard as it may seem for someone who only sees cup half empty, that it is a choice. It is a choice to look for a reason. Even with my kids, when they're bickering, I say, if you want to find a reason to get along today, I bet you'll find it because I've seen you be capable of getting along with others. If you want to find a reason to be annoyed with one another, you'll find it because there's always something annoying about somebody, right? So the choice is, what do you want to pay most attention to? And I think that that's hard for some people to digest. But at the end of the day, no matter how hard life might be right now in circumstance, if you want to look for something to give you a little bit of joy or bliss, I bet you could find it. And if you want to look at a problem and look for a problem, you can find it. There's always a way to choose which place you want to put your attention. And I think it affects the way that the rest of your days and years and life unfolds. And so if we want to live a life by design, we've got to decide what to pay attention to, and we'll start to see more of it.
Wow. That's the most incredible answer I think I've ever heard. And you're the first person I've ever asked the last question to first. So thank you. I just kind of going off the script again, I was reading this morning this book by Emmett Fox, Find and Use Your Inner Power. And one of the chapters in here, he gives you a playbook. Here's how to be unhappy. And it's really to go back and just think about yourself and think about all the people that may have wronged you and think about how bad that hurts and think about all the things that maybe you felt slighted and really be a victim. So if I were to flip the script and were to say, not how do you be unhappy? I would ask you, how do you find peace of mind or some form of positivity now, Erin? How do you do that?
One of the activities that I do frequently, and specifically if I'm in a state of uncertainty or overwhelm or sadness or grief or worry or doubt or anything that makes us human. I mean, I think this is an important piece of this conversation, Matt, is that sometimes I think people listening will say, well, must be nice for you. You know, you were born this way, must be nice. And my response to that is that it's not something that is natural. As human beings, we have life experiences and circumstances that can move us along the emotional scale from the negative side to the positive side in any given day, any given moment. You could wake up and do your morning routine and set yourself up for success and have a difficult conversation with somebody you love. And that could move you to the negative side of the scale into frustration or anger or resentment or whatever, right? And same with just, the market shifts and you get met with some unexpected financial bill, or you experience a tragedy in your life. It takes the winds out of your sails. All of these things are going to happen in the life experience. So we're not expected to be sunshine and rainbows. And so in those moments of darkness, one of the activities that I do is I look back on how much of my now reality was once just an idea, a wish, a hope, a pipe dream. So let's say I'm in a state of struggle or uncertainty, or I'm feeling called to take a leap or pursue a dream, and it feels unrealistic or irresponsible even. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't do it because of this, and I can't do it because of that. And so I try to catch myself in those moments and say, first of all, the words I can't mean I won't. So I can't closes the valve. It's like I've just shut the door. I've decided not to explore. How could I make this happen? How can I figure this out? Right. And so we need to be aware of that language. And then the next thing I do is I do a lot of reflecting. So I write in my journal how many relationships in my life, how many opportunities that were created, how many of the blessings in my life were actually unscripted by me and my analytical brain. Meaning, you look back to a time in your life where you felt uncertainty before, and then you look at how far you've come, and then you realize if you allowed yourself to stay stuck in that moment and tell yourself you can't take the next step because of all the reasons that follow XYZ, which is your fear, and you do it anyway. And then all of a sudden, these doors start opening and relationships you didn't know existed appear in your life, and the stars align and your paths cross. And now you look back from where you are today, you can see that the unfolding is always happening and that you didn't need to have it all figured out. Like, you have the sign behind you that says everything is figure outable. And it's true, but there's also a piece there that's like us with our fear-based analytical brains needing to know how it's going to play out before we're willing to take the next step. But we all have evidence in our lives of that unscripted, that unsolicited opportunity, that unexpected blessing. And also how many of the things in your now reality were once just an idea or a wish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many? I mean, most, if not all, were pipe dreams. They were things that, once upon a time, I am going to build a business and be successful. Had no idea how to get there, and a lot of fears keeping you on the bench. So I totally resonate with your answer. And I would even share this to go back to the beginning of it. When someone says to me, it must be nice, to me, that's like such a passive aggressive, like almost a slight. It just feels like they have closed the valve, to use your term. They have shut down. They can't do that. And when I hear it must be nice, what I hear is someone who's been beaten down or someone who has that victim mindset still. And to hear what you're saying is, to me, it's a voice for the voice for the fight for good. For the fight for the hearts and minds of people to show them that they can do it. And I don't even necessarily know how I'm going to do it, but damn it, there is a hope and there's a way. And it doesn't start with I can't. It starts with how might I. So I do appreciate when you say we might be kindred spirits in some way, because I think very similar to that. It's how might I. I don't know exactly where it's going to go. I've gotten really comfortable, by the way. I don't know if you ever struggled with perfectionism or got in your own way. But for me, I used to struggle with the idea of I need to know the exact perfect plan before I get started. And I was paralysis by analysis and stuck with the analytical brain. And it's really shifted ever since I came into some real challenges in life, real challenges for me at least, and learned to accept the things out of my control. Does that have any weight with you, the idea of acceptance or just overcoming your own perfectionism or control?
Well, I would never characterize myself as a perfectionist. I'm definitely more of a spontaneous, fly by the seat of my pants, free spirit who then found
Oh,
myself in financial trouble as a result of it and had to figure out how
ah,
to live in an analytical world and create success in my business and things like that and put systems in place. But I used to joke that
cool.
I'm a B type person in an A type industry. When I was in the mortgage business, I needed to be a perfectionist to be successful as a mortgage professional because any imperfection would lead to stress, and stress wasn't welcome, right? So I learned to be a perfectionist in my business, and then a B type in my personal life, right? However, I will say that speaking to this idea of needing to have it all figured out, there's been a lot coming up for me recently since I read Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan's 10x is easier than 2x.
Get
And
out of here.
sitting on your
One that I
desk.
have right here in front of me.
Okay, I'm
That's the
obsessed.
book of the year.
Yes, I'm obsessed with that book. And the funny thing about it is that I'm the type of person, I see all the books on the shelves behind you, and I'm surrounded by similar bookshelves. And I'm the type of person, when I hear someone mention a book more than once, I just quickly order it on Amazon, and it ends up on my shelf as like a to be read. And I remember looking at that and being like, gross, that is not for me. That sounds like 10x, like hustle culture, which is something I've been unbecoming for the past 5 years, is this like rushed, stressed, overconnected, overcommitted, overwhelmed. And I finally read it and realized it was the complete opposite. That is not what the concept
Yeah.
is at all. And what I've noticed is that if you can learn to be a witness to your thoughts, right, and recognize how, as human beings, we all have fear, and that fear can be debilitating and can hold us stuck where we are, or it can be something that we play with and recognize and then get curious about. I've noticed in myself that that 2x mindset is one where, I wouldn't call it perfectionism, but I have an idea. And then let's say an opportunity presents itself. And then in some capacity, I start to
Okay.
cling on to that opportunity coming to fruition. I start to have
Okay.
this almost tunnel vision on this one thing that feels like it's the solution to the potential problem I might be trying to solve. And I'm starting to be a witness to that as like, oh, that's 2x. Like this one opportunity, this one potential client, that's a 2x mindset. The 10x mindset wouldn't be so hung up on how that person responded to that conversation or whether or not this person moved forward with me or not. Like that is so small. And so I wouldn't say it's perfectionism, but it's definitely recognizing how in the past I did want to have a plan and I did want it to be mapped out. But then when you compare your former plans to the unexpected things that unfolded to take you to where you are today, you can recognize that it's kind of fun to get curious and almost revel in the unknown rather than being paralyzed by the unknown. Does that make sense? Like we
No,
often
crystal clear.
fear it's not playing out the way we want it to play out because we've figured it all out and we've read all the books and we've attended the training and we've hired the coach and they've told us this is how to get from here to there, And then it's like, and it ends up playing out in a totally different way if you let it. So this is just like a kind of a game I've been playing in life and business, and it's been really I'm curious. I don't know. And it's been fun. And, like even everybody listening, if you went back to your 20-year-old self, unless you're 20, but if you're not, you're 21, right? But if you go back to your younger self at some earlier
We're
phase,
all still 21 somewhere inside. I'm still 21. You're still 21.
totally. If you go back to that younger version of you and you think about some area of your life where you maybe have already exceeded the expectation of your younger self. Like maybe you've earned at a higher level than you expected of yourself at that age. Maybe you've done something with your physical health. You've run a marathon, you've climbed a mountain, you've taken a trip, like a bucket list adventure, some area of your life, you've exceeded the expectation of your younger self. And I love that because it reminds me whenever I feel called to the next thing and I feel like, hang on, don't be crazy. I'm reminded that I have only scratched the surface. We've all only scratched the surface of our potential, and there's no way for our limited mind to see it, to believe it. And we've already proven ourselves wrong if we went back to the smaller mind of a younger version of us, right? So it makes life feel so much more expansive and so much more interesting.
That's a great word for how I feel about where our conversation is going. Because you said something that, as a business coach, I see a lot of challenge with people that have this idea they're still in the bottleneck. They're still looking at the small stuff and stuck in it. And you made a comment that that 2x opportunity might still be small. And I don't want to be stuck in the small. I wonder your relationship with that idea of being stuck in the small. Like at some point, what seems small now may have been the mountain, may have been huge. So can you take us back in time and share with us kind of the evolution of Erin Bradley and how you got to a place where, quite frankly, I by the way that you're speaking and communicating, I feel we can kind of go to another level in our conversation because I can tell that you're versed and incredibly smart and experienced. So can you walk us through your evolution a little bit? Maybe back when you were in your first starting as a parent, getting started in mortgage lending, and just how you got to be the Erin Bradley that's inspiring us today.
Yeah, well, it was a messy beginning. And I'll tell you that prior to me falling into the mortgage business in 2006, starting in fifth grade, I lost 5 of my closest childhood friends from the age of fifth grade till 23, and through a series of tragic events. And it was the same little town. I mean, fifth grade, high school, 2 in high school, 1 in college, 1 right after college. And so we would go to the same church and for the same location, same cemetery. It was just ridiculous, actually, how we could all be together again, at 23 years old over Guinness at the Irish pub. We're just talking about how are we here again? How are we here mourning the loss of another one of our childhood friends that we grew up with? And I remember having this moment of, excuse me. I remember having this moment of, there's one of 2 ways you can go with this level of tragedy just occurring in your life, is that you can either have this doom and gloom outlook and be, morbid from the perspective of everything goes wrong and what's the point, or you can learn from the truth of the mortality that we have no clue how much time we've got. And so if not now, when? And why not now? And that definitely led me to be an adventurer for sure. And so as I was graduating from Boston College with a business degree, my older sister was just leaving her corporate career with having her first child. And I remember thinking all 4 of my siblings had gone straight from college to corporate America, and that was my expected plan. And when I saw that, I just got my mind turning like, well, what if I climb the corporate ladder and then I want to leave because I want to be a stay-at-home mom? I don't know what the future holds, but I think I'd like to have a family someday. So I decided to be a little selfish right out of college. And much to my parents' chagrin, I moved home and got a job at Outback Steakhouse. And that was to fund my travels. And then I spent the next few years via kayaking the coast of Mexico for a month and living in Barcelona for 2 years and an African safari and the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu and all kinds of other adventures. I found my way to Colorado and then fell into the mortgage business. So I had a little detour. And the reason I share that with you is that it's great to have the optimistic outlook, and it's great to think, YOLO, you only live once, if not now, when. But when I went 100% commission, because I thought that self-employment and entrepreneurship meant freedom and flexibility, I did so with 0 financial safety net, no plan, no systems, no confidence whatsoever. I mean, I might be an extrovert, but I really abhorred the idea of being seen as salesy. And so most sales training for me just felt awkward and dreadful. And I fell flat on my face. By the summer of 2008, I was 35 grand in credit card debt, maxed out on all my credit cards. I had a lead for a new client, and it was the middle of the summer, and I had to ride my bike 5 miles across town and figure out what I can wear that I can ride a bike and look professional and not be super sweaty when he gets there. So I got there early to let the sweat dry off. And unfortunately, he also did. And he walked up to me at the counter at Starbucks as my credit card was being declined for a $2 cup of coffee. And I thought,
oh my gosh,
that was the card I thought that would work, Matt. I thought that was the one that would work. I mean, I was like, fingers crossed. if one of them's going to work, it's this one. So I couldn't try another card in front of this guy. So I just lied. And I was like, that's so weird. I'll have to call the bank. And then he bought my coffee and I was just at financial rock bottom. And point being that, it's one thing to be eternally optimistic. It's another thing to take that eternal optimism and back it up with a little bit of planning and strategy and preparation. And ironically, I asked my dad for advice and he said that if you think you're going to be good at this, do whatever it takes. And most people wouldn't do this, but I opened another credit card and the first thing I did was hire a coach. And I've never been without a coach since. So to the point of you being a coach, it's like, we can't see beyond, like you talked about the bottleneck, the bottle that you're in. It's like being in a box with walls around you. And that's the construct of our mind. So we can only see as far as we believe, right? And sometimes we can only believe what we've seen. And so it's hard to believe beyond anything we've experienced before. And so when I hired that coach, I remember thinking like, I am going to borrow the confidence that I see in them or the light I see in them. And I'm also going to borrow the confidence they have in me until I have it in myself. So that's where I think coaching is so powerful, is that because you do it for a living, and I know because I do it for a living, is that we have the ability to see almost through the wall that the person has in front of them and say, like, let's just get a sledgehammer and knock that thing down and let the light stream in. It's like this, there's endless opportunities and possibilities out there. So that wasn't my only complete failure, but there's been several others since, but that's a little peek behind the curtain of the story of how it all began.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you. And take us back to that credit card decline. I'm curious because the woman I'm talking to now is super successful. You've achieved, accomplished, and you're on the other side of it. But what did that feel like in that moment? Had to buy your coffee. Like, what was going through your head, and how was your body responding to all of that?
Just mortified. Even honestly, Matt, it sounds stupid, but like, I was a female professional in the mortgage world in 2007. I went 100% commission, wearing the female suit at the big mahogany desk, trying to play the part and feeling like an alien and an imposter. And I remember thinking genuinely, like, what do I wear to ride a bike? I can't wear a skirt and I can't wear dress pants. And so, the whole experience was just absolutely mortifying from the very beginning. And also the level of desperation I had that this guy hopefully picks me and actually I get a paycheck from it. My husband and I were getting married 2 weeks later. And I remember thinking, thank God we invited 230 people to the wedding, because hopefully we'll get enough money gifts that will help us pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Awesome.
So the coaching was great. And the reason I coach today is that one of the things I look back on is that I was given a playbook and I was desperate. So tell me what to do and I'll do it. Right. And that playbook, the strategy, it works. If you just, muster up the courage and muscle through the activity and do the things and check the boxes and track the activity, eventually you get results. And it was working fine. I was making money and paying my bills. And the problem was I just didn't feel aligned. I didn't feel authentic in anything I was doing. And I was doing the activity to get the deals to make the money out of desperation, but I didn't feel aligned. Like, it was almost like the version of me that showed up on the weekends with friends and family who's having a good time and living my best life. And then I go to work on Monday morning and I put on my work hat and it weighs 400 pounds.
Oh.
Ugh.
Oh.
Here we go, And so it was 4 years later that I read The Go-Giver, and The Go-Giver just totally changed my life. And I realized that the reason I felt misaligned with all of the activity to date was that it was all about me getting, like, do this to get that. And so I had become a go-getter and I had assimilated to the go-getter hustle culture in order to get deals and make money, because I didn't want the pain of being broke again. But when I read The Go-Giver, I had this huge paradigm shift, and I developed a strategy that allowed me to actually be of value to people when they don't need my services. And it evolved into this very specific strategy that ultimately allowed me to double my business seemingly overnight. I was pregnant with my second child, and I went from averaging 30 some transactions a year to doing 80. And the money was great, and I was drowning and I was crumbling and I was becoming a shell of myself. I was working 24/7. I had a toddler. I was about to have a baby. And I was like, this is not freedom and flexibility. So I almost quit the business and then developed a plan to get some help. And all along the way, I started teaching what I was doing to real estate professionals. So as a mortgage lender, I started realizing I wasn't the only person struggling with these old sales strategies. I wasn't the only person feeling awkward and salesy. I wasn't the only person struggling with confidence and consistency. And so as we started to bring it down to the human level and really work on this concept of chasing contribution and knowing the dollars will follow, I started helping other people. And that was where I found the most joy, is really just the teaching and the being of value to others. And the business from that point forward just continues to take care of itself. It's like chase the contribution and the dollars will follow. And, that maybe sounds too hokey, but it does work.
Oh, 100%. Totally agree. And shout out to Bob Bird from the Go Giver. Just had him on the show 3 weeks ago. Awesome.
He's the real deal. He was on my show too. He's the real deal.
I thoroughly enjoyed him. He was super. He was incredibly humble for someone who sold so many books and who has had such level of success. And he was super authentic and just very genuine in sharing his ideas and his challenges around OCD, and then how that was not something that empowered him, but he had to deal with it. So he overcame that to help impact you and me. Because my first business retreat was around his book. The first one I ever facilitated, that was the subject. So that's cool. You mentioned that. Go Giver. You did mention that you and your husband were about to get married back around the infamous coffee cup incident. So can you, if you want to, shout out this husband for a minute? How would you and your husband meet back in the day?
Well, we met in a bar, which is fitting for us. No, I was
Outback Steakhouse.
No, I was living in Barcelona. I was in Barcelona for a few years after college, and my sister's husband was opening some bars and restaurants in Philadelphia. And when I got off the plane, having not been home for the previous 8 months, there was a new bar open in the Philadelphia Phillies stadium. And it was a humongous bar. So my sister picked me up from the airport, and I met all 4 of my siblings and my parents. We went to a Phillies game, and my husband was working for my brother-in-law. So I met him the day I got off the plane at the Phillies stadium. And so we were both diehard Phillies and Eagles fans, and we were friends bartending for a few months because I stayed in Philadelphia for a year, taught Spanish and bartended. And so we became friends. And then we went to a wedding together, and the rest is history. And then we moved to Denver on a whim to help my brother-in-law open a bar. And we thought we were coming for 3 months in the summer of 2005. And then again, the rest is history. So, and then about 10 years later, we thought we were moving to Winter Park, a little ski town, for the summer. And we stayed here. So we now live in a ski town in Colorado. We've been here the last 8 years. It's been great.
Wow. Well, I think that you're not in mortgage lending anymore. You've now switched to something else that's your passion. So what happened after mortgage lending?
Well, when I almost quit the business after my daughter was born in 2013, I got some advice. Don't quit. Don't throw it all away. You didn't work so hard to get here and walk away. But the truth of the matter is, Matt, I went to a company dinner when I was probably less than a month away from delivering. So I'm enormously pregnant, and I had my best year ever. Like I talked about before, exceeded my own expectations. Never in a million years expected to be earning at that level. Having come from being a teacher making cash under the table in Barcelona, I was probably making $11,000 a year. So all of a sudden I'm making all this money. And in the beginning, I was trying to convince myself to be fine. I'm fine. But I wasn't. I knew I was completely running on fumes, exhausted, overwhelmed, and frankly, getting resentful of my own phone ringing. And I went to this company dinner, and I asked the women that were ahead of me in the game, and the men too, who, if I did 20 million in volume, they were doing 30 million in volume, and their kids were older. And how are you doing this? And they all admitted that they would work until 10 or 11 or 12 o'clock at night after their kids went to bed. And I just remember thinking, I don't know what I'm aspiring to, because I became self-employed in pursuit of freedom and flexibility, which later became the name of my book, Pursuing Freedom, and my podcast. But I didn't feel free on either end of the spectrum. It sucked being mortified and not having enough money for a cup of coffee. And it also really wasn't great when I was not present with my kids. And I'm physically in the same room and I'm emotionally, mentally a million miles away. And
Okay.
I thought to myself, I'm just going to play small. I'm going to shrink my vision. I'm going to shrink my vision. I'm going to try to do less volume next year, make less money, but be happier. And I just don't think that works. I think we are designed as human beings to expand. And what ended up happening was the business dried up completely and I found myself back in debt again. And so I look back and it's like, okay, so my options are either survive, suck it up, just be grateful for the money, or shrink your vision, which doesn't work, or get some help and scale. So I made a plan and I went into 2014 just laser focused on getting help. And I had a vision for hiring somebody by June, and the stars aligned for me to hire one of my best friends. And I trained her up in the business for about 3 months. We did training and the business dried up as we did that, which is one of people's biggest fears is like, I can't slow down because I'm afraid of losing what I've built. And it's like, but you can't keep going either the way you're going. So the business had to slow down a little for us to get a better foundation in place. And then the business more than doubled again. And so at that point, I joked that I was started dragging bodies onto a speeding train. I hired my nanny after 2.5 years. I hired one of my other friends and I hired people that became friends. And we started to have a really fun time with this small but mighty team. And we consistently started to grow the business. And I started to fire myself from things I didn't really feel energized by, in spite of the terrifying fear of, it not being me. And every time I fired myself from some aspect of the operations of the business that I thought was going to put me out of business, I would see the business grow again. And I realized that I was my own bottleneck. So I started to experiment with the game of life. We wanted to move to the ski town. Our oldest was in kindergarten. We said, we'll move here when they grow up. And then it's like, but if not now, when? Why not now? And then we moved here and the business doubled again because we opened an office in the ski town. So long story long is that we had a wonderful journey, but all the while my heart and soul was in the teaching. So I had published my book. I had started my podcast in 2018. We went on a 6-month RV road trip and homeschooled the kids in 2020. And I was investing in real estate, out-of-state Airbnbs, running my podcast, running my coaching business, running my mortgage business. And by 2022, I realized I needed to subtract something. So I retired my mortgage license in 2022, and I've been now full-time just focused on helping other people remove themselves of the bottleneck and design a business over and over again that aligns with a life that you want to run towards instead of just settling or sucking it up because it's what pays the bills. So it's really all about lifestyle design and just kind of like say yes to life. And it's going to be scary, but it's going to be fun. And no amount of failure really ends you. It just derails you a little bit. And maybe it's not a failure. It's just a learning opportunity. It's just like you're pivoting along the way, but you're running forward instead of staying stuck.
I feel like if I were to use AI and I were to ask AI to do something, I would want it to come back and speak to me the way that you're speaking, because you hit a lot of good buttons right there about the way that was absolutely awesome. And I love the way you unpacked it from survive success. I bet a lot of people listening to this can really relate to that. And then shrink your vision. Yes, I found survive success. And then I shrunk the vision, and then I went out of business. Then I started another business, and then I hit the wall of needing to do everything myself and starting to fire myself. What was that like the first time that you fired yourself in that first role, bottleneck role? How hard was that for you to hire someone? I think you said it was one of your best friends. How hard was that to finally pull the trigger and make that happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was terrifying. And I hear all the time with the people that I work with that they're afraid that someone else is going to drop the ball. And so my question is, have you ever dropped the ball? And also, while it might be scary to take that next step, I think it's scarier to stay where you are. I think it's really scary to think about convincing yourself to stay stuck, even when you feel deep down in your heart and soul that you're out of alignment. And at the times that I experienced the burnouts in my journey that led me to making those scary decisions to do it differently because I just didn't want to settle for the way it felt. I was at a point of just crumbling inside and crying myself to sleep. Like, this can't be it. This can't be the way the money's great, but I'm not. And this isn't what I signed up for. So if I want the freedom and flexibility, I have to believe that the future business will be unrecognizable to the one I have now. And when I look back, when I retired from my business and we were doing, 75 million in volume, and I think back to where I was drowning at barely 20 million in volume, the business looks completely unrecognizable, but I was having way more fun when I had surrounded myself with amazing rock stars and elevated them into the business and saw how the business changed their lives. And my fulfillment came through seeing their lives impacted by this business because it does have the ability to finance and fund an extraordinary life. And if it's done with intentionality and is there fear? Always. There's always fear. And is there doubt? Of course. And is the biggest risk usually your smartest decision? Yes, it usually is. Like, all of my biggest risks were usually my smartest decisions. And that helps me when I feel uncertain again, is like, okay, well, there you are. I see you, my fear. It's just part of me. And what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is you come back to where you are right now. And if right now doesn't feel freaking awesome, then be willing to leap, because it can be a great adventure if you do.
Mic drop, man. You are so easy to listen to. I'm so inspired right now. These kids I'm about to go coach, these 8, 9-year-old girls on my girls soccer team, they don't know what's about to happen, because this has been absolutely invigorating. I can see why you're so good at what you do. This is awesome, Erin. Thank you. What's hard now for you? Because you have overcome so much. What are you overcoming right now?
I think there's always this tendency to play small. You don't know you are, but I come back to that book. It just knocked me right over the head like a baseball bat. I'm like, I see it now, like, it's always scary. I mean, when I left the mortgage business, my default energy was to anxiously want to prove to myself that I didn't just make the biggest mistake of my life, because my business was thriving and it was lucrative. And I had achieved all that external success. Like he talks about in The Gap and the Gain, like I'm nerding out on Benjamin Hardy apparently, but like, in The Gap and the Gain, he talks about how you've achieved all this external success and you still don't feel fulfilled. And I remember calling my coach in 2019 and I said, I just had my best month ever. And I had righted the ship because we started the year in 2019 in the red, because 2018 was a tough year in the mortgage industry. Rates had gone up, not too different from the last few years as we record this in 2024. But rates had gone up. My business had a decline. I was preoccupied with doing other things like podcasting and coaching. And I felt like I had taken my eye off the ball. My business was in the red, my P&L in 2019. And I remember thinking, like, I refused to downsize this team and to let down my team members. And so I made a commitment to right the ship. And we very quickly created massive growth in our business, seemingly overnight. And it's a lot of what I teach in my programs. But I got to that best month ever in June of 2019. And I called my coach and I said, I feel like I just moored a ship to port and I'm on the wrong island. Like, just because I can do this doesn't mean it's still the thing that excites me and that I enjoy. And the first thing I did was I stopped all client-facing activities and I elevated a team member who's a good friend of mine. And for the next 3 years, I was able to dedicate most of my attention and energy to teaching, teaching workshops, doing the podcast, having conferences, coaching, whatever. And it was really, really fun. But by the end of 2022, I still was talking myself into this lane that I had achieved all this success in, but I couldn't figure out why it wasn't exciting anymore. Like I wasn't enthusiastic about that particular lane that I was in, but I was again talking myself into it for fear of letting someone down. Like, I don't want to let my team down. I don't want to abandon them. And so I resisted this call to leap. And when I finally did, the fear set in immediately of like, I need to anxiously go make it happen with the coaching business. And I had to catch myself and say, no. Like we're not trying to go backwards and put ourselves back in that seat of anxiously needing to have it all figured out for us to feel safe. And so I worked on what I call the unbecoming, like chill out, lighten up, be curious, go out there and chase contribution, connect with people, have fun, make an impact, and every opportunity will find its way to you in the right timing. And so I forced myself to do a 2-month sabbatical, and I enjoyed the holiday season at the end of 22. And then we rolled into 2023. And I'm not kidding you when I say, Matt, that the phone started ringing. People had heard, collaborations evolved, incredible opportunities, like all kinds of incredible things evolved. And I'm still working through this unbecoming, this needing to have it all figured out, because we want to connect all the dots looking forward before we can believe in and be confident in where we're going. And I just think that this is the work, right? The work is in
absolutely
loosening the grip, getting curious, chasing impact, chasing contribution, having fun. And it's been really fun to be a witness looking back to how the dots connect when you look back. And so when you feel scared, be okay with it. It just means you're still on your way. You know, it's an expansion.
Totally agree. And you said that, connecting some dots here, the number of people that I have spoken with and coached that have reached some level of what they would call success, this word curiosity keeps coming up. And I'm wondering when the concept of curiosity made its way into your life, whether it was at a very young age or as you reach this next level of scale or of unbecoming. How has your relationship with curiosity started to unfold for you?
Well, it really probably started in 2020 in a big way when I read The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And I was
oh my God. Every book that you are mentioning are like the most important books that have had like a major impact in my life, my wife's life, when we read that and did that workbook together. Oh, we're talking about Surrender Experiment. She heard me from around the corner over there. Wow. Sorry to interrupt. Please continue. I'm just astounded here how our paths are connected in a different way.
Yeah, well,
please.
We went on the 6-month RV road trip, right? And much like when I stepped away from the client-facing activities, I prepared for the worst. I mean, I need the listeners to know that this is the key piece, right? Is that we're on the show called The Eternal Optimist, and that doesn't mean that you feel 100% confident in everything you do and that you don't have the same self-doubt and insecurity and uncertainty and worry and fear and all the things as every other human out there. We all have that. And I don't know anybody who doesn't. So when I took that step away from the client-facing stuff, I was prepared for my business to just fall apart. So I ran the numbers and I figured out what's the least amount of money I need to make for me to take a break from this stuff that's sucking the life out of me. And I took a break from the stuff that was sucking the life out of me. And we ended up having a almost 60% increase in business the following year. Like it turned out I wasn't that important in that role. And then the next year we went on the road trip. And now I was for sure, this is definitely going to put me out of business because I'm going to be on social media and my clients and my referral partners are going to think I've just pieced out and I'm not working. So they're not going to refer me business and we're going to go out of business. So once again, I was prepared for the worst. And we had another 50% increase in business. I mean, I kept on proving my fears wrong by doing it anyway. Yeah. And so I was reading The Surrender Experiment because in the previous 5 years since reading Miracle Morning, I was such a hard driver. I was like goal achiever, goal set, goal achieve, goalpost moves, new goal achieve, need to hire somebody else, need better systems, need this, need that, need this. And it was always like chasing this idea that when I get there, I'll feel fulfilled or whatever. And so even my morning routine was kind of like a perfunctory checklist, you know? And I used to get up early for my kids and do the things and set the timer and meditate and do the journaling and write my gratitudes and all the things. And then I get on this road trip and we were not in a home on wheels, Matt. We were in a vehicle, a 23-foot, if anyone knows RVs, is a 23-footer with no slides. Okay. It's like a dinette that turns into a bed for one kid and a bed above the cab and a bed in the back for my husband and me. So I couldn't get up in the morning before them because there was nowhere to go. My dinette was a bed. My daughter was in it. There was nowhere to be. So I just had to force myself to surrender. And I started to really work on this like chill out. In this 6 months that we are in this little thing, the number one objective is joy and present moments. And I don't need to be in this goal chasing, goal achieving version of me in this 6 months, but it became the beginning of this journey of witnessing the way I had been behaving for so long and how unsustainable that pace really was, and how no external achievement was going to change the way I was feeling inside until I started to address the inside out approach. And so that's the unbecoming. It's just like choosing not to be rushed and stressed and overwhelmed and overconnected, and just like taking it easy, even though my brain wants to say, you got to go, you got to hustle, you got to justify, right? Because I took this big leap, and it's like, well, maybe you don't. Maybe your brain's not right. Maybe your brain's just full of fear, and it's just compelling you to behave out of alignment with who you really are. So it's been an interesting journey, and it will continue to be as it evolves, right?
Yes. As it evolves, as we surrender to the possibility of what we don't know, what could become. Is the Unbecoming, is this a book that you are working on that you're going to share? Not that I'm trying to put more on your plate here, but that sounds like something that is worth reading or just journaling about and being in. So Is this your next project, The Unbecoming? Is that the book?
Not yet, but you maybe gave me my next project. I don't know, Matt.
I don't know. You've said so many things that have connected dots, and I just want to share with you. I kind of flipped out on you. If you're watching on YouTube, I flipped out a minute ago. I'm getting ready to give a speech here soon, and I'm practicing it. And the first book I'm going to talk about is the one that's had the biggest impact on me. It's The Miracle Morning, which I've been practicing since July 22nd of 2015. And I still do it to this day. So this is this was amazing. I'm going to try a little game with you. I've never done this before. I'm going to throw some books up here. I just want to see. While my camera shuts down, I'd like to see if you have read any of these, if this connects with you anyway. Because you've mentioned The Miracle Morning, you've mentioned The Surrender Experiment, you've mentioned Ben Hardy. We're on the Ben Hardy trip for a second, so we've got Who Not How. But I wonder if you've read this one. I wonder if you've read Kelly Flanagan.
No,
and Lovable. This was the next evolution for me, because it seems like we've been on kind of a parallel path or perpendicular path, some kind of path. And this one was around just learning to love yourself and find your inner peace. So it was how I learned to let go of always more, was to really, really comfortable with the shame and or guilt that I felt growing up when I wasn't able to satisfy what was my dad, pushing lovingly, of course. So Lovable was the one, but I also have a couple more in here. Oh, who's this? Did you just pull up a puppy into your lap? Who is this?
This is Tater Tot.
Tater Tot. Okay. Well, Tater Tot, you're famous now. You're like I want to say Ross. So you're like Marcel the monkey from Friends, my wife would say, because she loves that show, Friends. My friend Dane, who is the expert at vision casting and dream setting, he wrote this one, Dane Espegard.
Ooh.
And then I got coached by this guy last year named Dan Martell, coached me, and this was getting back your time. Seems like you've already mastered that at scale, so that's awesome. I could go on. You sent me down the rabbit hole, and I appreciate that. Let's come back to you. Talk to me about where can we find you? You mentioned a podcast. You mentioned a book. Talk about your book and your podcast and where we can find out more about you, Erin, because I'm sure our listeners are going to want to reach out.
Well, yeah, the book and the podcast and the company are all called Pursuing Freedom. So pursuingfreedom.com is my website. You can email me at erin@pursuingfreedom.com. I love meeting people. I love hearing from people. So if someone is listening and there was a takeaway or an aha moment or just whatever, maybe something you want to challenge as impossible, I can be found on Instagram at Pursuing Freedom Official, and you can DM me there. And honestly, what makes my day is to know if I've ever made an impact. And one of the things that I told myself a long, long time ago when I found myself struggling in insecurity, whether it be around, picking up the phone to make sales calls or ripping the Band-Aid off and using video or starting the podcast or anything that felt really embarrassing, right, or awkward, I would tell myself that if my message can help one person today, then shame on me for playing small. And then I would put the message out there with the hope that I can help one person And if someone sends me a DM or they message me and say, I heard something that struck me, then I feel like it propels me forward and it keeps me excited to try to keep showing up. And you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm easy to find if you look up Erin Bradley Pursuing Freedom. I'm the person answering, and I love hearing from people.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to go and follow you on Instagram instantly. And this has been absolutely amazing. I asked you the last question first. What's Eternal Optimism mean to you? So, and we've been talking about what books have been impactful for you for like most of our discussions. So I want to ask you that one. How about your music? What is the artist, the song, the genre that just lights your soul on fire and just fills your bucket?
Okay. Well, I'm going to be giving away a secret here, Matt, because people don't know. They don't know until they see the dancing what is happening here. I took 8 years of Irish step dancing as a kid. And when I hear bluegrass or any kind of banjo or string or fiddle, my feet move so fast. It's like my I don't know if I can say this on the show. My husband said like a cheetah on meth. I dance so fast. I dance my ass off. I love music. I love live music. I love dancing. I love bluegrass. I like jam bands. I like classic rock. I love it all. I love music. Live music is my jam. That's my home base.
Fantastic. What's your karaoke song if you ever get on stage?
Oh my God. Well, okay. I have the worst voice on the planet. So the song that is my karaoke song, I kill it. It's Kenny Rogers, The Gambler. I crush.
Oh.
Keep it all in a low baritone. You got to know when to hold up.
Thank you. Thank you. That was absolutely amazing. That was amazing. Thank you. This has been awesome. You know what? I don't want it to end, but it needs to at some point. So I'll ask you this. What is it that I did not ask you that might make for an interesting last question?
Well, you didn't ask me my motto, so I'll share my motto is that the goal is to build a life you don't need a vacation from. The goal is to build a life you don't need a vacation from. So if it feels like you're postponing the enjoyment of life because you either feel like you haven't earned the right or you feel like you're afraid to slow down for fear you might lose what you've built or whatever, and it's hard to come up for air and it's hard to find those present moments in your life, in your day, that is the moment to ask yourself, am I living in full alignment? And are my actions reflecting my true priorities? And am I saying someday? Because we don't know how many days we've got. So I really, truly believe if you've got some kind of pipe dream and it feels so big that you can't imagine how you're going to get there, don't worry about how, just drop the pin in GPS and say, if not now, when? And I'm going there. I don't know how long it'll take and I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm pretty sure once I've decided, the path will unfold.